Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kent City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 2nd. This is a remote meeting by order of the governor due to the COVID-19 crisis. Want to let everyone know that a live broadcast of this meeting is available on Kent TV 21, our city Facebook page, as well as the YouTube channel, which is also Kent TV 21. Before we start and call the roll, I just want to ground everyone in our vision and mission to remind us all of the work that we're being done, why we're doing it, and what guides us in that. So the vision for the city of Kent is where people choose to live and businesses change the world. And our mission as a city is the city of Kent is committed to building a safe, thriving, sustainable, and inclusive community. So those are the things that we use in all of our decision-making, both council, mayor's office, and our city staff, and just an important reminder for all of us. With that, Kim, could you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Ralph?
Here.
Council President Troutner?
Here.
Councilmember Boyce?
Here.
Councilmember Fincher?
Here.
Councilmember Kaur?
Here.
Councilmember Larmer?
Here.
Councilmember Michaud?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kim. We will move on to item number 3, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda from council or staff?
None from staff this evening.
All right, seeing none, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as written.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We will move on to public communications. This evening, we've got public recognition, and it is our March Employee of the Month. So each month, our employees submit nominations for Employee of the Month. This is a coworker or someone in a department that they feel has gone above and beyond in a task or just their day-to-day work, and nominate them for the recognition of Employee of the Month. I am pleased to announce that for March 2021, Janine Johnstone is our Employee of the Month. She has worked for the City of Kent Municipal Court in the probation department for over 20 years. Janine was hired on June 12th of 2000 as a temporary probationary police officer. That same year, on November 16th of 2000, she became a full-time probation officer. She was promoted to her current position as the probation supervisor of the Kent Municipal Court on February 1st, 2007. As a probation supervisor, Janine is responsible for overseeing staff and the timely and accurate administration of probation services and functions for the City of Kent Municipal Court. Janine was nominated because she is an excellent communicator. She simplifies tasks and is direct in her expectations. She inspires loyalty, enthusiasm, and the commitment to act in support of the department's goals and challenges staff to do their best. When she answers the phone, Kent Probation, this is Janine, there is a crescendo pitch in her voice and a volume that says, "I'm happy to be speaking with you." All of the positive attributes that make Janine such a great leader also enable her to supervise defendants at a very high level that both serves public safety requirements while at the same time leading defendants towards successful outcomes. Her understanding of policy, procedures, resources, and best practices in the field of probation are second to none. Janine continuously embraces our values, and we celebrate her as March's Employee of the Month. Thank you, and congratulations to Janine Johnstone. If you get a chance and see her, please tell her congratulations for being a fabulous employee and being honored as our March Employee of the Month. With that, we are going to move on to community events. I will start really quickly by recognizing that March is Women's History Month, and the City of Kent will be celebrating that. Keep an eye on our social media channels because we will be featuring female trailblazers from Kent throughout the month. And I have it on good authority that our first feature is going to be our very own Mayor Isabel Hogan, who was the first female mayor in the City of Kent. So tune into our social media channels for the whole month as we celebrate amazing women from the City of Kent. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Council President for community events.
Thank you, Mayor Ralph. I just have one thing to share this evening. On March 6th, we have the Kent Residential Recycling Event. That will be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Hogan Park. You can bring items that you normally are not able to put out at the curbside. So just a reminder, these items collected will be reused or recycled. And if you'd like to see what items are being accepted, you can visit kentwa.gov. But again, take advantage of this opportunity to do some spring cleaning.
All right. Any other community events? Councilmember Core.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have Living Well Kent, a nonprofit in Kent who has been, they started vaccinating immigrant refugee communities here in Kent. They are bringing the vaccinations to their offices. So a doctor comes in and vaccinates. They're only able to do 20 appointments on a Saturday, but anyone who is qualified, who self-identifies as a refugee immigrant community member or a person of color, they can reach out to Living Well Kent on their social media and schedule an appointment with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other community events? All right, I will close out this section of our agenda with a reminder to check out our Kent Arts webpage and Facebook page. We're doing a couple of streaming concerts coming up. We Banjo 3 and AJ Croce. AJ did an amazing performance for us. It was last year or the year before. Definitely check it out. And you can look at those streaming events on, again, our Kent Arts on our website and on their Facebook page. Okay, we will move on to item number 5, which is reports from council and staff. And it's an opportunity for all of us to share with you the work that's being done outside of the council meetings and making sure that Kent's voice is being heard in the region and that we're being well represented. So I will start. I've got 4 or 5 this evening. First one is a shout out. Councilmember Core mentioned Living Well Kent was able to participate in their Youth Policy Council Black History Month event last week. And it was, I will tell you, it was pretty amazing. Those youth are doing a fabulous job in their leadership skills, and they presented on folks in Black history that inspired them. So presentations from historical figures to modern day actors, and it was a great event to be a part of. Want to say thank you for the work that they're doing. The Flood Control Advisory Board met this last week. I am the vice chair of that committee. We are working on an education process. Usually that committee only meets through the spring, and it's to approve or make recommendations on the budget to the flood control district. But the group has decided to become more involved in the planning processes. So we had our first meeting of the year last week. And obviously that's extremely important to the city of Kent with the Green River and all of our flood control projects that we have here. So we'll keep you posted as we work through those processes. The other meeting that we had last week of note is the South King County Housing and Homelessness Partnership. I am also the vice chair of that committee. We met and had a presentation from the consultant that's been hired to set up the capital projects arm of SCIP. So Microsoft provided grants, and SCIP was a recipient of one of those grants, hired a consultant, Cedar River Consulting Group, to build the structure that will be the capital projects arm of that. So council has approved for the $1,406 and potentially the $1,590 money funding to go into SCIP so we can work on those South County specific homeless and low income housing projects. And we're putting that structure in place. So it's an exciting step for SCIP. When SCIP was formed a couple of years ago, there was no plan for any capital money. And with those 2 pieces of legislation, there is now capital dollars coming into that organization. So I will keep you posted as we build out that framework, hoping to have a final report from the consulting group as early as May. Finally, want to just remind people that we are continuing to partner with King County Public Health on vaccinations at Showware Center. Things are running very smoothly, getting a lot of folks vaccinated at that location. We had a call with Director Patty Hayes today to talk about how vaccinations are going and the state of COVID in general in King County. We are the 2nd lowest municipal area or county in the country, just short of Hawaii, I think maybe she said Honolulu, with lowest cases. So very proud of the work that the county has done. Talked about supply issues. We continue to struggle with that while we've all seen in the news that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been approved and sent out. The state of Washington is getting about 60,000 doses, 19,000 coming to King County, but then there's no expectation of additional supply on that Johnson & Johnson vaccine for another 3 or 4 weeks. So supply continues to be an issue. Very proud of the work that Kent's done with our adult family homes, working on low-income senior housing, and those strike teams are now going to be branching out to homebound seniors. So folks that are not able to get out or don't live in a congregate setting will now have that opportunity to be vaccinated in their homes. So good news to report on that front. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Administrative Officer, Derek Matheson.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I have a few items for you. I reported at your last meeting on implementation of your directions from the first day of the City Council retreat. And I just wanted to provide a little more information on the sequencing of that direction, since our law department is really busy these days, and all of that direction affects the law department in one way or another. Our first priority is going to be to update the resolution containing the City Council rules to reflect the new committee structure going into place on September 1st. Our second priority will be a stronger board and commission ordinances and bylaws. Third will be your direction on month-to-month tenancy. And even though that's third on the list, the law department has already drafted an ordinance, and we'll have that on your committee of the whole agenda next Tuesday. And then finally, we'll update the City Council goals with new descriptive information for 2 of the goals. We think we'll be able to have all of those pieces to you by the end of April, although it's possible as we dig into the boards and commissions that we'll find that that's a little bit more complex and time consuming than it may look at this point. Speaking of the retreat, we're working to schedule the second day in person, and we're looking at a couple of Fridays in May, and staff has reached out for your availability, and we'll try to pick a date that works for everybody and get that on the calendar, and then work with you to confirm agenda items for that meeting. Next, I wanted to congratulate our Public Works Director, Chad Barron. Chad has been our interim director since October, and Mayor Ralph removed the interim and made him the regular director effective yesterday, March 1st. So congratulations to Chad. And the rest of my written report is in your packet, and we have no executive session this evening.
All right. Thank you, Derek. Yeah, definitely a round of applause for Chad. We're really excited to have him in that role permanently. He's done a fabulous job as our deputy director for a long time, and proud to see him as our Public Works Director. Council President Troutner, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had 3 presentations at workshop earlier this evening. The first one was support for manufacturing and roles of apprenticeship in the workforce development. And we heard from AJAC, which is the Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee. They were formed in 2008, and they work with employers and provide apprenticeship for on-the-job training. Most of what they do is 93% is on-the-job training and hands-on. They use mentors, and their programs can last anywhere from 1 to 5 years. 7% is supplemental instruction and technical and community college. So a lot of these apprenticeship programs, people can come away with access to a 2-year degree plus credentialing in whatever trade they have decided to take on. So they are statewide. They have about 400 people who participate annually, and we are very lucky to have a training center and their headquarters located here in Kent. For more information, you can visit www.ajactraining.org, and it's a wonderful program and opportunity, especially for our young people that are trying to decide what they want to do in this last year of high school. We also heard from the Public Works Department on the West Hill Reservoir project. That project actually has been underway and in the works for quite some time. This will provide water storage to the West Hill, also help with fire flow storage capacity, something that we've been talking about is much needed on the West Hill. It's a 5 million gallon tank, and in the past several months, Public Works has been reaching out to people in that community, letting them know that there's going to be road closures and pedestrian rerouting. So today, part of 38th at South 248th closed, and it will be closed until probably the beginning of July 1st, 2022, while they work on that project. We also heard from what is the WDC, and that stands for Workforce Development Council of South King County, another opportunity for people that are seeking jobs and employers to have a tool and a resource for being able to connect people. They work with both people looking for jobs and helping them with employment specialists. They also work with employers to provide services, job fairs, helping people with support if they're laying off people or if they're dealing with people that are needing help with their jobs. So you can find them at www.worksourceskc.org. And again, a couple presentations today that are really helpful for people that are looking for work or businesses that are looking for support. Really good opportunities and information out there. And our workshops are available online, and anyone can go back and watch those. So I highly recommend them if you're interested. I also sit on the Regional Transit Committee. We will meet on March 17th. And the Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee met on February 25th. We had a couple presentations, mostly around substance use disorder treatment programs. We heard some information in King County that is probably not very surprising, but the rate of overdose has gone up, mostly due to counterfeit fentanyl pills, which you've heard about quite a bit lately, especially in young people and people that are experimenting for the first time. And it's causing a lot of concern in the community. They've actually developed an alert line to kind of let people know where they're seeing a concentration of overdoses or more of these counterfeit pills in the area so that people are aware. We also heard from the Cowlitz Indian Tribe Health and Human Services. Very interesting presentation on how they treat people with substance abuse disorder using cultural traditions. They bring in elders to do storytelling, spiritual connections, and it was really kind of an interesting presentation, so one that I really enjoyed. And with that, I will turn to my colleagues and see what they have been up to, and I will start with Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam President. I serve on the Regional Water Quality Committee, and we will have a meeting tomorrow, so we'll talk about that next time. And then I don't have anything new to report for the Human Services Commission. We're still working on the ensuring equity in the grant-making process. So I will have more next time. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you. Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Madam President. We had our Growth Management Planning Council meeting last week on the 24th. We had update on Affordable Housing Committee, update on their legislative priorities, and we also approved 3 new committee members. We also had presentation on Urban Growth Capacity Report, which is due in June. It is how cities and counties or jurisdictions are meeting their planning goals and how much capacity is still there in each jurisdiction. And we approved, this will be approved by Growth Management Planning Council. We also had update on countywide planning policies. We had a presentation on that, and there is a deadline for public comment on March 10th, which is the same night as I understand Public Issues Committee pick. So there was a conversation about, I guess they'll be discussing at PIC to see if any jurisdictions have any comments or any concerns with the countywide planning policies. I also serve as the chair for the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency Advisory Council. We will be meeting on March 10th. And I also participated in the Living Well Kent's presentations on Black History Month. And it was, as the mentioned, Chief Padilla was on there as well, and they were very inspirational and amazingly organized by youth. I know it was about, I think, 4 or 5 hours long event, but it was amazing. I just want to remind everyone, even though individuals are getting vaccinated, please continue wearing your masks, because you still have folks we need to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaur. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Council President. I sit on the King County Affordable Housing Committee, and we will not be meeting until March 24th. And then I sit on the King County Aging and Disabilities Advisory Council, and that one will be meeting next Friday. So I'll have updates in the subsequent meetings this month.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam President. I am the vice chair of the PIC SCA meetings, and we haven't met since the last meeting. So our next meeting is on March the 10th. I do just want to remind my peers that our executive director, Deanna, on Fridays put on these chat side. They've been very, very good. I think they had Councilmember Ed Prince from Renton did a good job, and they had last week was the mayor of Redmond, Angela Burney. We also had Councilmember Dunn. So you should get a chance. You should try to attend those. They're very informative and very fun, and be surprised what you learn about people that you think you know, but you really don't know. So that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Boyce. Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam President. I serve on the Regional Fire Authority, Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority, and we met on the 17th of last month. And at that meeting, we ended our public hearing on fire benefit charges. And so the next thing is a regular meeting tomorrow night at 5:30, station number 78 in Covington. That's all I have, Madam President.
And actually, we will meet on the 17th, Councilmember Thomas.
Along with both of them?
No, we don't meet tomorrow.
They should start emailing me those things.
Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. So MID, Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Council, which I serve on, we had a discussion about our budget. We're coming in pretty close to what our adjusted budget was because of COVID. We're going to be looking at, and we're starting now to give us plenty of time, we're going to be looking at programs that we had to cut funding from, because if money is left over at the end of the budget year, we're going to try to make some of those programs whole again, or at least adding back some of the funding that was cut instead of sending that to newer programs. We also had an overview, so criminal and legal system overview by Marcus Stubblefield, who's the Criminal Justice Strategy and Policy Manager out of the King County Executive's Office. And we also, the second presentation, they did them jointly. They were kind of like a front and a back or bookends. The second presentation was by Victor Liu with the Asian Counseling and Referral Services. And both of them were talking about and have a goal of keeping people out of the justice system. So using trauma-informed approach to do everything that we can. The counseling agency is a multidisciplinary agency. So they have, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's physical or behavioral health, everything is right there in one place. So both of them are looking at how to deliver culturally relevant and services to help meet their goal. The Asian Asian Counseling and Referral Service, which has an office here in Kent, is known for their cultural competency and relevance. So both gave very good presentations. In addition to helping with the legal aspect, again, dealing with the whole person, they also help with food insecurity, looking at the issues that are affecting their population is the same as with everybody else, all the other populations, anxiety, loneliness, everything that we hear about going on because of COVID-19. KCD, King County King Conservation District, which I chair. We now have an interim director, and we are well into the search for our new executive director. So all of you will be receiving a survey that's going to come in your email. We're also going to be sending surveys out to our stakeholders. And the reason is we want input from all of you as to what do you want to see in the new executive director, and what do you want to see for KCD in the years to come. The voting, hopefully all of you know that voting is now open for KCD, King Conservation District, for the Board of Supervisors. There is a wide slate, thankfully. There's a lot of attention that's being driven to it now. Usually the replies or the hits are in the hundreds, and they're in the thousands now, which is good news for us. And the last one that I want to talk about is the Arts Commission. So we haven't had another meeting. We won't be meeting until the third Wednesday, next week on Wednesday. But as the mayor mentioned, we have 2 AJ Croce concerts coming up, and also We Banjo 3. So get your tickets. They are on sale. You can go to the city's website, or you can go directly to the Arts website to purchase those. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Madam Mayor, that ends our reports.
All right. Thank you, Council President. As you can see, our City Council is extremely engaged at the regional level, and that only bodes well for the success of our community and making sure that Kent's voice is heard across the region. We will move on in the agenda. The next item is public hearing, and we do not have a public hearing this evening. Item number 7 is public comment, and the comment period is an opportunity to speak to the council and the mayor on issues that relate to the business of the city of Kent or agenda items council will consider at this meeting. Comments that do not relate to city business are not permitted, and additionally, the state of Washington prohibits the use of public comment period to support or oppose ballot measures or candidates for office. For those of you present and interested in speaking on any item before council tonight, including applications the city received to amend its comprehensive plan, the time to do that will be during public comment portion of tonight's agenda. So now, if you would like to speak and have not yet signed up to do so with the city clerk's office, you may do so now by emailing the clerk at cityclerk@kentwa.gov, or if you're participating over the phone and do not have access to email, the clerk will unmute callers before the public comment closes to see if any phone participants have additional comments to share. With that, I am going to turn it over to our city clerk, Kim Komodo, to call our speakers. As a reminder, you do have 3 minutes for your comments. There will be a timer up on the screen. And if you could state your name and city of residence for the record before you begin your comments. Kim, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have multiple people signed up to speak tonight. The first speaker is Julie Seitz.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
My name is Julie Seitz, and I live in Federal Way, and I'm coming back here tonight. I was at the last City of Kent Council meeting. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council President, and Council members. I wanted to come back this evening, and I thank you for having me, to correct the record. We wanted to make sure that the council knew that in the project that we are opposing, the cell tower project at Seattle Pet Cemetery, that King County Permitting Division directly notified a City of Kent by jurisdiction residents, as well as unincorporated King County. And the second thing I wanted to make a correction is to point out to the council that we had submitted prior to the meeting on 2/16 a finding by the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation at the state that our Seattle Pet Cemetery, historic cemetery, is in fact a human cemetery according to state law with the protections thereof, and the cell tower project is within the cemetery's dedicated limits. I wanted you to just point out that that is in your inbox. And tonight, it's important. I wanted to recognize the 9 human beloveds that are at our cemetery. And we love them and we honor them, and they exist here at our cemetery. The first beloved is Dolores Flores, second Gladys Prince, third Roger Agan, fourth Marilyn Ayer, fifth Rosemary Weir, sixth Winona Kerr, 7 Diana Velma Gray Bell, 8 Ronald Warren, and 9 Ellen Warren. We love all of our deceased at our cemetery, humans, pets, and canine officers. We feel our cemetery is important to the city of Kent and our greater community, and it is a sacred place. Thank you for having us, and I hope that you would reconsider at some point in advocating for your city of Kent residents, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Detweiler.
Good evening, Mayor, Council President, and council members. I live in the Crystal Meadows development in Auburn, Washington. I feel that the City Council should deny the proposal to amend the 4 parcels of property known as the southern end of the Bridges PUD Urban Separator to low-density multifamily. Or, if approved, remove parcel 3990 and leave it as commercial property for the following reasons. There are already 100 homes that have been approved for construction that are within 1/8 of a mile of the property. There's a new school being constructed on 304th within 1/8 of a mile of the property. There's a college, high school, middle school, 3 elementary schools that are all within 1/8 mile of the property, except for the college. On 320th, there have been 400 plus apartment units that have been built and occupied. The construction of homes that have taken place over the 5 years, including the Bridges property, along with the building of homes in process, has increased the traffic congestion greatly. Can you imagine the congestion of traffic once the schools are reopened and operating at full capacity? All the buses, all the wives and husbands picking up their children at school, it's going to really play havoc with the traffic. There are already been accidents at the roundabout. There is only 1 fire station to cover the existing area for fires and medical aid. That puts additional stress on that fire station. There's a creek that runs through the parcels of property. There are environmental issues with high density of proposed townhomes on the property. We do not want that creek to get contaminated due to high density of homes being built on the creek. Townhomes being built close to the development of Crystal Meadows will have a negative impact on that development. The subject property is located in the city of Auburn, and I think the city of Auburn should have a right in assisting in the decisions on what is to happen on that property, because I think that property will be eventually annexed into the city of Auburn. In closing, on behalf of Crystal Meadows Development and myself, I would encourage the city council members of Kent to deny the proposal or delete parcel 3990 from the proposed amendment. Thank you.
The next speaker is Edie Leety. Edie, if you can unmute yourself.
There you go. Sorry,
There you
I thought
go.
you were unmuting me.
I was trying.
I'm Edie Leety, and I live in the Bridges in Kent. I've lived in the Lee Hill community since 2003. Thank you, Mayor Ralph and City Council, for the opportunity to speak at this meeting. Tonight, the City Council is being asked to make a decision on whether to allow another major change to the comprehensive plan for the parcels at the southeast corner of the Bridges PUD. My concern is that this change could have far-reaching implications to both the City of Kent and to Auburn. There are numerous reasons I believe the Council should vote no on the most recent amendment to the comprehensive plan. It doesn't meet the requirements for major comp plan changes as it negatively impacts the local residents and the environment. Kent may not be following proper code procedures regarding PUDs by following vesting rules that have expired, opening the city up for lawsuits in the future. And thirdly, proper public notice was not given on the application per city code, leaving the city again vulnerable to lawsuits from residents of both City of Auburn and Kent. Regarding the major changes to the comprehensive plan, putting in 150 housing units will harm the residents of Lee Hill as well as the wetlands, as there are already 4 communities plus an elementary school that are already approved or underway within blocks of this major intersection. Allowing this developer to follow old wetland codes will allow them to build too close to the wetlands, driving wildlife into the neighborhoods even more than is already happening with recent bear and coyote sightings in Lee Hill neighborhoods. I question whether Kent is following its own procedures under PUDs. In emails between Kent and Auburn's planning department, Kent acknowledged that the city code requires Kent to go back to the council to amend zoning maps to recognize the PUD. They never did that here or in many other PUDs in Kent. This causes vesting to be in question. During the annexation discussions, Auburn sought legal counsel who found out that this could cause legal issues later for Kent or Auburn, depending on the annexation outcome. One Kent email says, and I quote, "Oak Point is pushing us to move forward with their comp plan amendment, which would be counter to our current policy direction, and I struggle to imagine our council approving," close quote. The current vesting does not cover low-density multifamily housing that the applicant proposes for the land use. As stated in another email from Kent, quote, "Our legal department has determined that through the PUD, the applicant is vested to a senior care facility as conditional use, which it no longer is in SR1 zoning, but another CUP application would have to be submitted," end quote. Even if Kent has addressed all the legal concerns I've mentioned, the burden of public notice was not properly followed. Thus, Lee Hill residents were not given legal notice of this application made June 7th, 2019. 2 city codes are at play here within the Kent City Code 12.01. Lack of following these codes also puts the city in a vulnerable legal position. Neither mailed or posted notices were done within the required timeframes, giving the public little time to respond. Additionally, since Oak Point had not yet transferred the open area tracts dedicated to living at Bridges HOA as it should have, Oak Point received the notices instead of the Bridges owners. There is already a precedent in Kent where proper public notice was not given for the sale of Pine Lake Park to Oak Point, and it cost the city $760,000 to undo the sale. Does the council really want to head down that legal road again? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kim Hytrack.
Good evening. This is Kim Hytrack, and I live in Auburn in the Crystal Meadows neighborhood, which is on the west border of the 4 plots that Oak Point is looking to develop. That's at the roundabout. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. As a few other members have mentioned about all the new homes that are being built, there's approximately 110 homes that are being built in this area. And there's also a very large subdevelopment that's being done just north of the high school on 124th. All of these homes are contributing to traffic. It gets to the point when all the kids parents are picking up and dropping off kids. We can't even leave. I can't even turn out of my neighborhood. I did a rough estimate of so they want to put 150 townhomes in this parcel of land, and I did a rough estimate of what it would be if it was single family homes, and it would be approximately 55, probably not even that many, because there's some mitigation that will need to be done for the wetlands that borders one of the plats. That's 3 times the number of homes that really could go in there, and that's really quite a bit of, you're talking 300 more cars and all the children that will go to our schools. We have 1 middle school and 1 high school. And they would have to do something about the wetland to develop all of that, which wetlands are very important, not only for our animals, the little bear that joined us last spring, and the coyotes that we see the scat on the trail every day, but it scrubs our air. So it's good for our environment. So we really hate to see them try to either move them or eliminate them. And also, if you're putting in townhomes there, which are of lesser property value than the homes that are going to be just west of this property, it can degrade the property value of that neighborhood, which some of them, I don't think those homeowners are very excited about. So I would just, if they can't stop the building, let's hold it to single family residents only and keep it to 4 to 5 homes per acre. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Leslie Carr. Can you unmute yourself, Leslie?
Okay, sorry about that.
That's perfect.
Thank you for this time. My name is Leslie Carr. My husband Jim and I have owned our Oak Point home since 2016. Part of the reason we bought here was we were told senior housing would be built on the corner of 124th, and that was a major part of our decision, as we are very senior and believe that would be a good transition into senior housing while allowing us to stay in the neighborhood. Now it feels like the city council wants to rush through an addition to the community without senior housing, without any plans for how to handle the additional traffic, without a plan for policing, and without the means for us to maintain our paths and parks. We're not lawyers, so this is just our opinion about what feels like the rush to develop the corner. We have watched the bridges deteriorate from a peaceful, beautiful community to one where crime is increasing and emboldened by a lack of police presence or response. A little over a week ago, Mayor Ralph stated that things have gotten better, that owners had been provided with tools and that were going to be extra patrols to address policing issues. Yet within a week of that, a house in the bridges was vandalized, and the police response was, "You don't live in Kent and therefore are not in Kent's jurisdiction." This is not an opinion, it really happened. Things are definitely not better. Respectfully, we'd like to see something official in writing that shows or teaches every homeowner or renter in the bridges how to get police attention so we can protect ourselves upon the next attack on our safety. In addition to everything that's already been discussed, the Boulevard Main Street is now being used as a track for drag racing. It's loud and dangerous. Crossing the street to go to the mailbox should not be a life-threatening event. We agree, as Mayor Ralph said, that the developer has every right to develop her property. But we don't believe that right supersedes the homeowner's right to receive services we pay for. It is not right and certainly shouldn't be legal to take money for any service and then not provide it. I'm not even going to go into the danger to the wetlands that this development may or may not cause. So Mayor Ralph and City Council members, with all due respect, what is the rush to get this development pushed through? Whichever side of annexation you are on, we believe you owe us the answer to this. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker I'm going to call on is Deborah Stewart. Deborah, if you can unmute yourself.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, members of the audience, my name is Deborah Stewart. I'm a resident of Kent. I'm a former land use planner for the City of Seattle. I'm also a patron of the Seattle Pet Cemetery. I thank you for this opportunity to correct the record and to also point out that there are serious health issues associated and being researched with cell phone towers. And therefore, this issue very much affects the residents, the employees, and visitors to the city of Kent. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jeff Watling.
Thanks, Kim. Jeff Watling, resident of Auburn in the Lee Hill neighborhood. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak. It's good to see those of you that I had a chance to work with years ago. I, too, am here to express my concerns about the proposed Bridges Comp Plan amendment. You've already heard many reasons that should give you pause about this land use decision. Rather than repeat those, I'm going to focus on another one. And that's that the situation that exists with the bridges and with these 4 parcels, it doesn't represent the good local governance that I know you're committed to. In fact, I think the situation represents disjointed land use planning and bad local governance. As you know, probably from seeing the maps, Bridges isn't even situated contiguous to Kent. And even within that, the 13 acres that are proposed are not contiguous with the rest of the developed bridges. These 13 acres, which by comparison is about 13 soccer fields. 13 acres are on the far south edge of the bridges and are at a very significant intersection of Lee Hill at 124th and 304th. These parcels have no functional relationship to Kent land use or the Kent Comp Plan. They do have significant functional relationship, though, with Auburn's land use and comp plan. And that's a pretty big deal in terms of local governance. Here's a scenario. If the shoe was on the other foot, what if Auburn was governing a land use decision and a development decision for 13 acres at Kent Kangley and 124th? It's about similar distance to what this is to inside of Kent. I think as Kent residents and as Kent council members, I'm pretty certain you would say, heck no, that doesn't make sense. In fact, that seems like disjointed planning and bad local government. And I think you'd be right. That's exactly what's happening functionally here with Auburn. Any logical planning effort, any local government effort would associate these 4 parcels, the land use, the zoning, eventual development with Auburn and not Kent. Auburn does remain interested in annexation. Had a chance to talk with multiple Auburn staff. They confirmed that. I think that the 2 sentences in the staff report misrepresent Auburn's position. I ask that you deny this request. I ask that you complete that annexation process with Auburn as a next step. I think it's only going to get messier as this continues, but let's fix that situation. Let's get to good local governance. Let's let the developer propose land use decisions with the right jurisdiction, and that would be Auburn. Thanks so much for the time.
The next speaker is Nancy Rogers.
Good evening. You can hear me, I take it?
Yes.
Good. All right. My name is Nancy Rogers. I am a land use attorney with Karen Cross and Hempelman, which my offices are in Seattle. And I'm here tonight on behalf of Oak Point. First, I want to thank the council and the mayor for opening up public comment tonight on Oak Point's proposed comprehensive plan amendment. Oak Point does ask, of course, that the city council act tonight to amend the comprehensive plan designation for the southern 13.2 acres at the bridges in order to change that designation from its current status as urban separator to low density multifamily, or LDMF. The city council decision criteria for a comprehensive plan amendment are all met here. Those were thoroughly explained in the staff report to both the Land Use Planning Board as well as the report to council. And Oak Point supports the staff and land use planning board recommendations for approval. Just want to make a note about a couple of those criteria. One is that no adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare should occur. Well, no adverse impacts can occur from a comprehensive plan amendment that changes a land use designation. All future potential impacts, and we've heard a lot of concern stated tonight, and we understand that concern, we've heard a lot of it. All those future potential impacts for a potential townhome project will be reviewed in later permit proceedings. They are not on the table tonight. All we are looking at tonight is a change in a land use designation map in the city's comprehensive plan in order to bring the possibility of long-term benefits of increased housing supply, as well as to bring the comprehensive plan into a more consistent status. As the staff reports detail, LDMF designation in the comprehensive plan is more consistent than the current urban separator status. Other issues that we've heard and want to respond to tonight, this property is in the incorporated limits of the city of Kent. Yes, it is an island of Kent surrounded by Auburn, but it is in Kent. At Kent's request, Oak Point met with Auburn over the last 1.5 years regarding annexation and future development. The proposal for housing is in fact based on the city of Auburn's recommendation. However, the city of Kent's staff and mayor have explained why annexation to Auburn is not happening right now. Nonetheless, the type of project that is going to result from moving forward through the Kent process is exactly the same type of project that Auburn also desires. We also heard some concerns from council about the wetland complex between the existing bridges development and these lands. That is actually controlled and owned by you, so won't be developed. And I see my time is running out, so I will conclude by simply saying that now is the time for the city of Kent to act on this longstanding comprehensive plan amendment application request and to change the land use designation from US to LDMF. Thank you.
The next speaker is Brian Ross.
Good evening. Brian Ross on behalf of Oak Point, Bellevue, Washington. I'd like to thank the mayor and council tonight and as well all of the staff that's worked on this application up to this point. As you know, we've been working on the Bridges property for a number of years now, including the property that we're here to discuss tonight. We previously had an approved commercial project on this site that has not been viable for some time now. So most recently, we made an application or a request to the city in 2018 to change the comprehensive plan designation. Since then, we've worked with Auburn and Kent on zoning and annexation related issues and the ultimate design with the expectation that Auburn would annex the property. But when Auburn decided to stop moving forward, we then asked Kent to go ahead and process our request that had been pending for some time. The amendment to the comprehensive plan that we have before you is consistent with Auburn's desire for townhomes and sets the stage for additional public process. If ultimately approved, the new use would result in less traffic generation and greater open space than previously approved commercial plans. I spoke with some of the neighbors at the neighborhood meeting that Mayor Rolfe had organized just over a week ago, and we had good conversations, and Oak Point is committed to work with the Bridges Homeowners Association as we move forward to address their potential concerns over additional people using their trails and recreational facilities. I also heard at that meeting that for some reason the tennis courts in the Bridges had never been striped. So for the residents who are here on the line tonight, I'm happy to tell you that our contractor's already contacted the HOA manager and we'll get that work done as soon as the weather allows. And as Nancy just mentioned, I heard last week a concern at the Council of the Whole meeting that the open space in the center of the Bridges complex, there was a concern about future development there. That area was in fact conveyed back to the city of Kent. It is Kent property and therefore cannot be developed because it's both open space, sensitive area, and it's owned by the city. So in closing, I ask that you approve our request tonight And thank you for your time.
Mayor, that is all the speakers that I had signed up to speak, and I checked the participants tab, and there were no additional public speakers.
All right, thank you, Kim. So to all of our public speakers regarding Oak Point, this item will be presented to council, and there will be opportunity for council to ask questions and have further discussion under other business, which is item number 9 on our agenda. Item number 8 is the consent calendar. This is a compilation of work that the council has done in past weeks at the Committee of the Whole. All of these items have been discussed and agreed upon to move forward. So with that, Council President, is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt the consent calendar items A through I.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Consent calendar is adopted. As I mentioned, item number 9 is other business, the Bridges Oak Point Ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map. And joining us tonight for the presentation is Matt Gilbert. Sorry about that. Matt, okay. I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. Matt Gilbert, ECD Deputy Director. I have a prepared slide deck, but I will that you've seen before, and I'd like to go through it just for the orientation of those who might not have seen it in the past. However, I will try to address some of the comments that I heard tonight as I go through. So, if please feel free to interrupt me with any questions. I'm just fine with that. So, just to reprise. This proposal would change the comprehensive plan land use map designation from urban separator today to low density multifamily. And I think one important point that probably addresses a lot of the comments is that tonight's action where our staff is recommending approval is simply to expand the allowed uses on these 4 parcels or to include housing. As some of the speakers alluded to, there was a commercial development approved here at one point in the past that's allowed under PUDs in Kent. Those uses are limited to what's allowed in our neighborhood community commercial zone, and that includes offices, retail, coffee shops, also gas stations is on that list, and senior housing was allowed there as well by a conditional use permit. So a lot of that was permitted at one point in the past. So this action would add housing to that allowed list of uses. That's all. The low density multifamily designation has several zones that this could become on the zoning map that will be part of a future land use proposal. However, the comp plan just deals with the type of use, and that is housing. So I think that's important to keep in mind as you consider this decision. Just again, for orientation, the big blue arrow there on your screen shows the island, this 155 acre area of Kent located within, surrounded by the city of Auburn. The map on the right, I'll draw your attention there, shows the difference in the current comprehensive plan designations at the Bridges site. Single family 3 units per acre to the north, urban separator to the south. And I think what's probably more important to the land uses that you see out there is the planned unit development, which was approved in 2004 and 7. There were a couple of iterations of it that allowed the housing to be built there under some creative development regulations allowed and envisioned through PUDs. So those big pieces of land allow PUDs. So that when I use the word creative, that's allowed in code. So here's the site once again outlined in yellow. As you can see, it's largely surrounded by single-family housing. A couple of big arterial streets within the city of Auburn border it to the east and south. And there's the roundabout that was referred to in the comments. Again, the proposal adds housing to the list. So the possible zones that I referred to could be single family, 8 units per acre, low density, multifamily, medium density multifamily, and a couple of townhome zones as well. That will be the subject of, again, a future land use decision that will come to the council as well as the hearing examiner. So those zones really allow for a range of densities, residential densities between 8 and 16 units per acre. Again, paraphrasing the comprehensive plan designations, that there's no harm to public health, safety, and welfare. That's really, I think, handled by our codes related to traffic, related to environment, related to aesthetics, related to utilities that we have developed over so many years. I'm sorry, I see it, Councilmember Thomas. I see your hand up. Would you like to? I don't know.
Just real quick, I just want to understand one thing, Matt, that you said. So you said that they're just adding some townhomes to the existing. So are you saying they can still have their little coffee shops and their 7-Eleven or their gas station there again, or like originally, or not?
Those uses remain allowed under the PUD. This decision would not preclude those from being proposed in the future. However, right. I will just for the sake of just to remind you, Oak Point has talked about building townhomes there, but the answer to your question is that this action would not preclude commercial development there in the future. Thank you. So, yeah, you're welcome. So I'll just kind of keep moving here. There are several policies within the comp plan that address that are relevant to this proposal. Our comp plan encourages housing, encourages a variety of housing types to allow lots of choice for residents within Kent. And this proposal very much supports those goals. And I've detailed these out in the staff report. I'm very much paraphrasing here, but the possibility of adding higher density housing at this location does support the city, several of the city's land use and housing goals. And then I did focus a bit in the staff report, and maybe last time we spoke, on this the concept of the urban separator, which is, as I show, comprises the southern half of this site. This site doesn't really fit the designation of or it's not the same as other urban separators. And so I think this proposal does acknowledge that difference. And the main difference is that commercial development is allowed at this location. That's not true of, as far as I know, any other urban separator areas within the city of Kent. The PUD, again, allows that special allowance under the PUD code. And so the urban separator designation is somewhat misleading, and I think it may be inappropriate for this site where this intense development is allowed. Most urban separator sites allow 1 home per acre, because they don't have that PUD designation on them. So this changing the comprehensive plan designation for this 13 acres where commercial development is allowed will reflect better the fact that development is allowed here. So additionally, this 13.2 acres is non-contiguous with other county designated urban separator areas. And I have a map that I can show you here in a moment. Those urban separators are intended to be corridors that create green spaces largely between cities or along high value natural resource areas such as the Seuss Creek. In this case, though, as you can see from the surrounding development, is fairly, it doesn't really fit that criteria. It doesn't have that surrounding corridor that will make it a valuable amenity. Here is the green latticed area shows the King County urban separators that are designated in the area, and down there at the southern end of the whited out area is the proposal. So it's not connected by county designated separators. So again, the value is lower. This wetland map is something that I had shared with you earlier this week. I just wanted to make sure that it was shown here tonight. The purple highlighted area is the subject is the proposal area, and the yellow kind of medium yellow color there throughout is the mapped wetlands for the site that cannot be developed. And as one of the speakers earlier shared, the city owns the majority of the wetlands in this area. So there's sort of a double protection of city ownership and wetland regulations there that will be respected as development takes place, and will also preclude further development of areas outside of this proposal. I just wanted to hit a little bit of the review process that I didn't cover last time. As was stated earlier, this proposal was accepted in 2018 and delayed due to the anticipated annexation by Auburn / de-annexation from Kent, as those talks proceeded and eventually kind of slowed down and were ultimately deteriorated. Oak Point did request that this move forward, and under the city's adopted rules for comprehensive plan map, or for proposals such as this, we are obligated to make a decision one way or another. And Oak Point had sort of deferred that decision for several years until this year, where they said they requested that it move forward. So here we are. On January 11th, this was reviewed by the Land Use and Planning Board. On February 8th, there was a public hearing where public notice was provided per the Kent City Code to a radius of mailed to a radius of 300 feet around the property, and published in the Kent Reporter. So that we followed our code in that regard. Additionally, something that we did some extra code work in terms of public engagement. On March 2nd, the mayor and staff met with the Bridges neighborhood after a letter was sent out kind of announcing that to the Bridges neighborhood and surrounding sites as well. There were about, I think, 40 or 45 neighbors that turned out there. We had a wide-ranging discussion related to the annexation, related to policing concerns, and related to this proposal as well. So that there was good engagement there. So as far as next steps, I think it is, again, important to reiterate that this is not the end of the discussion about development at the site. This simply adds housing to the list of potential uses. The next step will be a zoning change. The zoning code is different from the comprehensive plan map because it comes with development regulations. So depending on which zoning designation is proposed and comes before the city council, that will determine the rules that are used for development in terms of multifamily or density, heights, things like that. So that will go before the hearing examiner after the proposal is made. So I assume that will be in the coming months. The hearing examiner will make a recommendation. At that same hearing, I anticipate that there will be a proposed revision to the PUD. The hearing examiner will review that as well and send all of that along to the city council.
Matt, I see Councilmember Boyce's hand up. Councilmember, do you have a question now, or do you for the end of Matt's presentation?
I have a question now. That's okay, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Matt. I just first of all, thanks for sharing this again. I think I heard this, but I just want to be sure. I know there's been a lot of talk with the mayor, both mayors. I know there's been a lot of talk amongst the staff with Auburn and Kent. Can you let me know if Auburn, are they supported of the change to the comp plan for this type of development? I know you guys was talking about, are they okay with the changes to the comp plan for this type of development?
Well, Auburn has selected to not go on the record. They are aware that this is happening. And I will echo Brian Ross's comments because I was in a number of meetings with the city of Auburn where it was very well known that their ultimate goal was to build townhomes, and they've indicated to me within these meetings that in fact that was their desire, that when they thought about housing at this location, that the townhome product was their preference.
Okay.
Councilmember Boyce, I can confirm in my conversations, it's my understanding that yes, this proposal was developed in significant amount of conversation with Auburn and their desire for this to be the use on the property.
I think that's a critical piece too, right? I mean, I want to make sure what we're doing is something Auburn believe in. So, I mean, so you answered my question. So thank you very much.
Well, that was the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions, especially if there's something that I overlooked from the comments that you'd like me to comment on. I'm happy to attempt to do so.
All right, thank you, Matt. So we'll start with Council President Troutner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think, Matt, you said it multiple times, this is just adding something to that plan. It does not change our ability, and I think you said this the other day, Madam Mayor, that it does not change our ability to continue to work with Auburn if they wanted to move forward with an annexation plan, correct?
These are two separate actions, and I can report to the council that as late as this evening at about 6 o'clock, I had a conversation with Mayor Backus about the things that Auburn is looking at requiring, and the fact that our public works directors are still in conversation. So completely separate actions. This action tonight is not related to de-annexation or annexation.
But it doesn't hurt any of that either.
It does not change that conversation.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Next, I've got Councilmember Fincher, followed by Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did tune into that or watch that last workshop with Auburn, and the mayor did mention that the cities are still working, just as what the mayor said, that the cities are still working together, even though at this point the decision is that it is not going to move forward. As the mayor said tonight and was said before, if a solution does come up, then we are still open. I do have a question, though, about, I think it was Miss maybe Leetes, about the comment about the vesting and notice and the notices. So I want to just double check our time frames on that, on any notices that we're giving. Are we sure that all the notices were posted in the timely manner that they were supposed to be?
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Yes, I did confirm that the notices were mailed and published per this our very normal previously adopted requirements for notice on comprehensive plan amendments that are site specific like this one. Regarding the wetlands, the wetland complex, this whole Bridges site was mapped at the time of the PUD, and that's something we are very aware of. And the wetland regulations will be followed throughout the development process. As I shared, the wetlands outside of this, outside of the subject, proposal area are contained within protected tracts that the city owns. The wetlands on the property will be contained within protected tracts that I think probably the HOA will maintain. The city doesn't acquire wetlands anymore, but the wetlands on the site will be contained within protected tracts, and per normal wetland, per the requirements that require buffers and keep the construction out of those sensitive areas.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Matt, I have a question about the notices as well. You said the 300 feet is the regulation. Do you know how many were sent out? So I'm wondering, 300 feet from the edge of this property, does that even include all of the housing and the bridges?
Did I get a piece of cake?
There's a little.
That would not include all of the houses in the bridges. I'm sorry, I don't have the list at my fingertips, but what we do is run a radius, through a GIS program of any property that 300-foot radius touches receives the mailing. And I do understand, there's a lot of open space around this, but I will just state that we've had a pretty robust turnout for this proposal, and while I think people found out through social media, through the modern grapevine, in a lot of cases, I was happy to see that. But we did follow our adopted notice regulations very carefully, and those might bear a little bit more scrutiny in the future. But we're following the code that is adopted. We're working under that. So maybe that's not the most satisfying answer from maybe that's not as robust as it could be. However, it is the adopted standard.
Okay, Councilmember Michaud, does that answer your questions?
I have more questions, Madam Mayor, but I can come back.
Okay, we'll go ahead. We'll go around and then just go ahead and leave your hand up, and we'll make our way back through. Next, I've got Councilmember Larmer, followed by Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you. So I think my concerns are what I've heard tonight about emails that regarding, well, actually, I think, I'm not sure if it was email, but there's a statement about old wetland policy. Matt, can you shed any light on old policy, new policy regarding those wetlands? I'm trying to understand that statement. And then also, there was referenced a city email about legal risks and concerns with our own policy. Do you know anything about that?
I didn't quite track the second part of that. I can address the first part that as we've been in conversation with Auburn, one of their questions related to, as they're trying to understand this PUD, which is a fairly robust, it's a big land use application that entitles a lot of development, and it took place over a lot of time. One of the questions there that Auburn had was, well, what about these wetlands? And our response, and what we've kind of developed with our legal team, is an opinion that because the wetlands on the bridge's site were analyzed as part of the bridge's development, the hearing examiner heard them. They were all mapped out, in a large study that became the basis for development over time. That those wetlands, as they were mapped, continue to be valid for regulatory purposes, and that's when you have a development that takes place over such a large period of time, it's important that there be some predictability there. So those were, that's why they were analyzed back in 2004 when the hearing examiner looked at those. And so all the homes that have been built on the site, all the roads, all the parks and trails have all respected those wetland boundaries. We believe that those wetland boundaries are still valid, as they were kind of considered, just like a wetland or a stream within an existing subdivision would. Your home would not become illegal if the wetland boundaries grew after your home was built. Your home would still be a valid use and would not be subject to code enforcement or anything like that. But similar situation here with these wetlands. So are there new standards and definitions since 2004? Yes, there are. The wetlands code is it's the critical areas ordinance that has been updated, I think once or twice since then, and each iteration kind of has different ways of coming at the wetlands as far as the rating systems and buffers and mitigation standards. So that's something that we will look at very closely when a development proposal is made, depending on the scale of this development, and we'll make sure that they're staying outside of those wetland boundaries. But it'd be the new boundary. It'd be the new boundaries, or would it be the 2004 boundaries? At this point, we believe it would be the boundaries from 2004 that were approved by the hearing examiner. That those are part of the development. I'll explain PUDs a little bit more. Maybe that'll help explain this. PUDs allow for flexibility. They allow setbacks to be smaller. The whole intent is that they allow a creative, sort of a non-traditional development to take place on these larger sites that can be master planned. So when the site plan was produced to the city back in 2003, was approved in 2004, it it approved it's sort of its own set of development regulations. That's, again, what PUDs are intended to do. That creativity requires some departures from existing regulations. And the lot layout was considered, the road layout was considered, and the wetland boundaries were also considered as part of that overall site planning effort in order to create that predictability into the future as this large piece of land developed over time. Those boundaries were set at the time of the hearing. And so as these homes have been built over the last decade plus, those boundaries have been respected as they were set back in 2004. And so it's our opinion that those would continue to be valid on future development at the site, as part of that overall PUD approval.
Adam, Matt, I'm going to see if Adam can weigh in on this as well on our legal opinion regarding vesting and all of the issues that we're talking about.
Yeah, sure. So Adam Long, Assistant City Attorney. So vesting is a legal term that generally just deals with what regulations are going to apply to a specific proposal or a permitting decision. And whether that's going to be the old regulations or new ones. But when you're looking specific to the planning and development, like the bridges, you really have to look at the PUD approval and any modifications that have been made to it since the original approval. But really, vesting itself is something that can't be fully addressed until the time an applicant submits a specific proposal. And then at that time, staff can figure out, based on when the approval was made, what rules have changed, they can figure out what regulations or what versions of them are going to apply to that specific development. And here, there's still several steps before we get to that point where the applicant would actually submit the specific development proposal where vesting is evaluated. Like Matt said, we've still got to go through a zoning change and a PUD modification to allow what appears to be what they're wanting is the low density multifamily and the townhomes. And so we can't fully evaluate that until we get to that step. So we've had some general conversations about what that might look like. As Matt said, we've probably leaned towards respecting the 2004 wetland regulations that were in place back when the original PUD was approved.
Councilmember Larmer, does that address your questions?
Yeah, I just have real concerns about 17-year-old standards. And then I think the other question was a reference to one of our own emails about violation of our policy. I don't know if we have anybody on staff who can address that.
I without looking at that, it's hard to say for sure, but I believe what that was probably referencing was there's a suggestion really in the Kent zoning code that says once a PUD has been approved, that that should be acknowledged on the zoning map. It's not a requirement. And Kent has, I counted them some time ago. I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 PUDs across the city. That could be a little wrong. It's been a while since I counted, but none of those, the idea would be that if the zoning map is then changed to acknowledge the PUD, it would effectively kind of lock in the development standards approved under the PUD. That would be a strategy for creating that predictability in the future. That's not a requirement, but it is mentioned in the code. And so that's something that in those emails we'd been discussing with the city of Auburn. They saw that in our code and they said, well, why haven't you done this? And they were trying to, again, understand if they did annex, what would they be annexing and what would they be required to honor in the future. So that was just part of a pretty wide-ranging conversation where we were kind of figuring that out together. But no, we don't believe that the fact that the city failed to take that action invalidates the PUD in any way. It's simply a suggestion in the zoning code. So the bridges is a valid PUD.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Boyce, followed by Councilmember Core.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the chief and one for Adam as well, too. I think we're up about this year project. I think this Kent Police still belong to serve the people over here. And there was a comment that was made that somebody said that the police came in, they don't serve. I was hoping maybe Chief can speak to that around police service in that particular area. Ralph?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, there was some questions raised to that, I think, at the meeting, and since that time, in different back and forth conversations. To my knowledge, we are responding, and I have some recent examples of some priority calls that we responded to right away, like we will with any other calls for service. I think there can be some confusion at a couple levels when maybe coming in through the dispatch center to 911. A call receiver will see an Auburn address and maybe get confused. That could happen. And it could also be an understanding thing for some of our officers because it's a detached part from the city. So to address that issue, we're putting out new training with a new map, refreshing everybody's information to make sure they're clear that this is a part of the city and that we respond in accordance with our normal response practices and priorities. And then we're also reaching out to Valley Communication to ensure there isn't any holes in their system as well in terms of getting calls in and making sure that Kent gets dispatched to the calls there. Lastly, there was a glitch with our online reporting, and that if you put in an Auburn address, it wouldn't take it, or it would at least create an error message. We were trying to address that, but in the meantime, ignore the message is what we're telling everybody. Submit your report online. The system will take it. It's just going to it'll just have an error message that pops up. But if you submit your report, it goes through and it goes to our sergeants for review. So we're addressing it. We're double checking their council member to make sure we don't have any holes in our response.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. And Madam Mayor, my other question is to our attorney, Adam. Adam, there's a lot of comments made from a legal perspective around the public notice, the wetland, and I guess from our office, your office, are you confident and feel good about, from a legal perspective, we dotted all our I's and crossed our T's?
As far as the public notice goes, yes, we've, based on what Matt said, we've followed what's in our code for all comprehensive plan amendment notices, the mailing and the posting, all that stuff, the publishing. As far as the wetlands goes, that's just a tricky, vesting issue that'll have to be figured out when we get to a specific application. We can take guesses about what it might look like, but it's a large PUD approval. There's been modifications to it, and we can't know for certain what's going to apply until we get to the point of seeing what's being proposed.
Just one quick follow-up. So we have done this many times before, right? So Adam, based on what you know at this moment, from a legal perspective, are there any concerns that you see for the city of Kent?
Certainly, as far as this proposal goes, it's hard to say. This is just a comprehensive plan amendment. Okay. We do have to take action on it, whether that's an approval or denial. The applicant is entitled to a decision. Going forward, it's hard to say. When we get to that PUD modification process and the zoning process, those involve different legal standards. There'll be hearings before the hearing examiner. And so it'll be difficult to see how it turns out, but we do have process in place to deal with those legal issues.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move on to Councilmember Core, Adam, can you just, I feel like there might be some questions around process and what this action is tonight. So tonight, what's before the council is to approve the comp plan amendment, and that allows a project to be submitted. This is not an approval of a project. So could you just sort of walk us through exactly what's in front of the council and then what the next steps are that would eventually get to an end goal of a project?
Sure. The comprehensive, and Matt might need to jump in here too, but the proposal in front of you tonight is just to change a site-specific change to the land use plan. And so that just would allow certain types of land uses to be in this specific area on these 4 parcels contained in that 13-acre sort of odd circle within the Bridges PUD, within the what is designated urban separator right now. So that would just allow certain uses to go there. Specifically, you would still have to rezone that property to allow specific, very specific proposals, specific types of developments there. And then you would also have to have the change in the PUD to allow the change from what's currently proposed or what's currently contained in the PUD as commercial to a residential use, the townhomes or what have you. But tonight is just the overarching big picture land use change.
And I would...
Matt wants to follow up there.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I would constrain it even a little bit more than the way Adam had put it. This allows us to consider housing at this site. When we talk to folks at the counter, they'll often come in with ideas for use of land. One of the first things we look at is the zoning and comprehensive plan maps, and if those don't allow a certain use, it's just the answer is no. So changing the comp plan map allows us to consider a rezone of the site and to consider housing through a more carefully defined development proposal in the future. This is an important hurdle, but it's the first of many hurdles that would have to be cleared before any work gets done at this site.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Councilmember Core.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Matt, I want to echo what Councilmember Larmer said. I basically had concerns about the emails that were pointed out in the public comment. I just want to make sure that you're saying it was just information only, basically, like just having conversations with City of Auburn. So it just makes it feel like we're doing something wrong, even though we're just following the process and just approving the comp plan. I completely understand what we're doing tonight, but I just want to point out that it raises some red flags in my head. And I also have concerns about, but Councilmember Boyce just mentioned about the police response time, and I hope we're able to address that for that neighborhood because they're still very much part of Kent, and they will be for a while until the conversation's still going on for annexation.
Thank you, Councilmember Cower. I without those specific emails, in front of me, it's hard to comment. But I can confirm that we did have these conversations with Auburn as they asked questions about the PUD. The City of Auburn, as I understand, does not have a PUD ordinance, so it's not something that they have a lot of experience with. I mean, PUDs are something that are out there, and lots of cities have these ordinances, but not every city. So we did have a lot of conversations, both verbally and over email, about what the city's approval meant as they were trying to get their head wrapped around that. So, we worked through a lot of issues. We were kind of far apart, and as we talked back and forth about those issues, I think it became clearer. And our conclusion, though, was that this PUD is valid, and that's what we shared with Auburn. But yeah, there was a lot of back and forth as we worked to come to a conclusion.
Okay, Councilmember Core, does that address your concern?
Sort of. Thank you.
Council President Troutner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Boyce, I think you were kind of trying to get to this, but what is our liability if we don't pass this? Can Oak Point come back and sue us? And that might be a question for Adam.
Yes, either it could, if we approve this, it could be challenged to the Growth Management Hearings Board by the residents who oppose it. And if we deny it, it could be challenged to the Growth Management Hearings Board by Oak Point.
Okay, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Carr, you brought up another red flag that I hadn't seen before, because we're going with our PUD versus no PUD existing in Auburn, if I heard Matt say that a few minutes ago. So that makes me kind of question what Auburn would do. Not that that's our jurisdiction, what they do, but there is an important part here, what's happening here. I would like to ask about the wetlands setbacks. You know, I was here in 2004 and 2007 when we went through this, and our wetlands, you know, we've got our setbacks, but Auburn's setbacks are different, I bet, than, and even ours are different. You mentioned that earlier, that ours are quite different than what they used to be, rather than 50-foot setbacks, 125 now. And who knows what Auburn's might be now compared to what we had back in 2004. So I got to tell you real quick, my daughter, we're celebrating her 44th birthday upstairs. And my youngest daughter was also here. And she had bought a home out there in Oak Point, loved it. It's very nice, very good. Nice trails, good park for the kids, good development. But the one thing they promised when they moved in was that there was going to be a commercial site down there in the corner that would have maybe, a coffee shop, maybe a gas station, something like that. And I bet the meeting the other day was quite robust, because you had a lot of people that didn't want it, and then you had some that maybe moved in and didn't care one way or the other. So I just see, I mean, I know you've got the votes, and I appreciate that. I'm still not quite sure. I'm not quite there yet. There's just so many things. It just feels wrong. And I don't blame Oak Point, because what's going on? They want to make money, and I don't blame them for that. And now they can get, with Kent, they can get building right away. Whereas if they had to wait till Auburn took over the annexation portion here, then they'd have to wait longer. And every day you're losing money when you talk about construction right now. So these are the things that are flying through my head here, that we're doing Oak Point a big favor, and I don't have a problem with that part of it. But the fact that there was this broken promise was made to my daughter, so it's become a little bit more personal. So I guess that's where I'm at this point. I'm going to continue to listen on those. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Matt, can you address that in the sense of, does this action tonight preclude a commercial development from happening on this site?
No, it does not. And I take Councilmember Thomas's comment as something that has been expressed by others as well. And I understand that there's some disappointment there. However, the current PUD code allows commercial uses only in this area. And yes, this would not.
Okay,
No, this would not preclude it. Yeah.
No, I have to follow up. I'm sorry. Matt, you just said our current PUD allows it. Yes, that's true. Auburn, however, you just mentioned, does not have a PUD ordinance of any kind. So how do we know what's going to happen down there? And, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of townhouses built, but I guarantee there probably won't be any commercial down there. Sorry, Matt.
I think I understand. What Auburn would allow or not, I think is not. We've consulted with them. Obviously, they've shared their vision for this area. However, I'm not directly familiar enough with Auburn's development codes or wetland codes to comment on hypothetically what they would allow here. We're moving this forward because this is in Kent's jurisdiction, and it's something that Kent is responsible for. And so we need to make decision on it. So again, this action would simply allow expand the allowed uses to include housing. I'm not really sure how else to put that. So it's about, while I do understand that there may be some disappointment that the commercial development won't be moving forward. As I shared with someone in the Oak Point or at the Bridges meeting, the commercial uses are not required, despite the expectations and maybe the plans that were in place back in 2004 or 5, 6, 7, and those have changed, and the commercial is not required. So the owners asking to go in a new direction.
Councilmember Michaud, followed by Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, Matt, I have several different questions that are all over the place. So first, parcel 3990, which one is that?
I'm glad you asked. Actually, I'm glad I looked. It's the if I can just pull my PowerPoint back up, I can roughly point it out for you. Just one moment, please. Don't believe I have. Oh, well, okay, maybe I do have a parcel map. It's essentially in this. Oh, sorry. Let me just back up. Okay, I please tell me if this isn't showing up, but you see the proposal area in blue. The parcel 3990 is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's in the southwest portion of the site.
Okay, and then can you go to the one with the wetlands?
Sure. There it is. So these are the wetlands as were mapped in 2004, and they're again, most of this is contained within permanent sensitive area tracts.
Okay, and then you said that the city actually owns these wetlands?
Most of what you see here, and I don't have the precise the precise lines of where they own and don't, but I believe it's down here, right within the pink area is represents the areas where the city does not currently own the wetlands. Those are mapped and protected. However, all the other areas to the north and surrounding that pink area are owned by the city. And
okay, so if we were to annex, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to share that was the normal practice in the early 2000s when wetlands were mapped and put within sensitive area tracts or tracts. Yeah, those were, the ownership of those tracts was transferred to the city of Kent. That was a practice that changed over the years, though, and homeowners associations typically own those now, but here they're under the city of Kent ownership.
So what would happen to those if we annexed the bridges?
I believe the responsibility would go to the city of Auburn. That's one of those details of annexation that we didn't get that far into the discussion, but typically if one jurisdiction has a responsibility for, for instance, roads or utilities or wetlands, then that would follow over to Auburn in this case.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so my next question is regarding you already said that notices were sent out. This is regarding the boards that are put up.
Mm-hmm.
How far in advance are those supposed to be, the notices put on the boards?
The Kent City Code doesn't require notice boards for comprehensive plan changes. They're required for development permits, subdivisions, conditional use permits. It's not something that's required, though, for this type of action.
Okay. So then my next question is, what role does council play for the zoning changes and the PUD changes?
So the zoning change, council doesn't see a lot of rezones these days. They used to see a lot more, but rezones are fairly tightly bound within code. They come to the council after a hearing in front of the hearing examiner, who sits as a sort of a quasi-judicial sort of land use reviewer. He's not a judge, but he kind of sits and similar to how the role a judge would play, and then makes a recommendation to the city council. As long as typically, there's several criteria that need to be met in order for a rezone to be approved. If the hearing examiner determines that those criteria are met, he then passes that recommendation for approval onto the council, who then reviews that evaluation and makes a determination to approve or deny. As far as the PUD, I believe what we're considering here would be considered a major modification. That's something I haven't dug into too deep, but usually when PUDs are changed and they require a hearing, those have to come back to the council. And I say that somewhat provisionally. I could get back to you with the code citation on that, but that's something that will definitely be considered in a public hearing setting and reviewed by the hearing examiner. It's just depending on the exact change, it could come back to council or not. I'd have to look into that a little more carefully.
Okay, and then, so if there was to be a rezone, that would have to go through the public notice process along with the PUD changes?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that the same code as the one we're dealing with right now?
No, it's actually different. I think there's more robust public notice. That's where you have the notice boards. I believe it's a 500-foot mailing radius, and as well as publication in the Kent Reporter.
Okay, but ultimately it kind of well, not ultimately, but so these decisions are really up to the hearing examiner? And then it goes to council.
That's right. The hearing examiner is the first stop. Well, actually, staff. There'll be an application made to staff. Staff will look at it, prepare a report for the hearing examiner, who will then render a decision after a public hearing. But yeah, the hearing examiner is really the first decision maker.
Okay.
Or slash recommendation maker, just to be clear.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, Councilmember Michaud? Okay, Councilmember Larmer.
Okay, so Matt, we keep talking about commercial still being possible, yet this is really coming before us because we have a developer who's, ready to build multifamily housing. What parcels is Oak Point looking at? Is it all of them? If they build what they plan to build, will there be any land left over for commercial?
That's hard to answer because they haven't made a direct proposal. They floated some conceptual ideas, but we haven't had a chance to look at their specific proposal. So what if they are successful with the comprehensive plan change and a zoning change, they would know what that specific proposal might look like. And at that point, it's hard for me to comment on because if there are allowed uses, then the owner or developer can work within that range of allowed uses. So I can't really comment on what they will do. I just know that this will open up the range to housing, and that they have indicated that's their intent. That could change.
Okay.
So it's hard to really comment specifically on the outcome at this point.
If commercial is built in that area, are the wetland setbacks the same? Because I understand that in 2004 it was a 25-foot setback. Today stands are 150-foot setback. If commercial were to be built there, what's the setback situation, or does that change with it being commercial?
Wetland standards don't change with the type of development.
Okay, so it would still be 25 feet, whether it was commercial or multifamily.
I believe so, and I'll kind of refer back to Adam Long's comments there, where we would also, we would need to look specifically at the time of that sort of proposal to make an official determination on the rules that apply there. But I think our current analysis would say we'd lean towards the 2004 PUD approved boundaries for those wetlands.
Okay. And just to make sure I understand the answer you gave, Councilmember Michaud, so we're not confident the zoning change would come back to council. It could, is that what I heard, that it could just go to the hearing examiner? We wouldn't see it again?
No, the zoning change would definitely come back to council.
Okay.
The PUD site plan, if the zoning were successful, then the PUD specific development plan, I'm not positive would come back to council right now, and I'm sorry for not knowing that specifically. But the rezones all come to council.
Okay. So remind me again. If the mayor, if our mayors are still talking as late as this afternoon, why are we doing this now? I guess I'm just confused on the timing. If we waited for so long during the annexation conversations, but those conversations are still going on.
Sure. So because Kent is the jurisdiction with responsibility over this land, the land use processes that we've adopted are all applicable here. And those processes indicate that landowners can propose to change the comprehensive plan map designation of their property, and as part of our adopted permit processing or application processing rules, we need to render a decision to those in a timely manner.
Okay.
Because of those annexation conversations, Oak Point voluntarily sort of allowed us to defer a decision into the future in order to let that annexation conversation take place. Now that as it's kind of played out over time, this started to go on longer and longer. Oak Point came to us and said, we'd really like to see this move forward sooner rather than later. And as the jurisdiction with responsibility here, we are obliged to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, and I would just jump in here. This is Adam Long again. We do have a legal obligation to act on this application in this part of our annual comp plan amendment cycle. In past years, the applicant has voluntarily allowed us to move it over, but they're seeking action on it now. And whether we approve it or deny it, we have to take action on it in this cycle.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Larmer, any other questions?
No, I think that's the most pressing ones I had. So.
Okay, Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to double check with Adam one more time. As far as the vesting and the notices, we are clear on that for this portion of the process.
Yes, as far as the notice goes, as Matt said, we've followed our code. As far as what kind of notice needed to be provided, when it needed to be provided, all of that. The vesting, again, is something that can't be fully evaluated until we see a specific application much further down the road. We can take a guess or have a lean a certain way, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a specific application.
Okay, and since they're in Kent or Kent School District, they're going to, in fact, are they in Kent School District or are they in Auburn School District?
The Auburn School District.
So I'm sure Auburn, like us, has school impact fees. In fact, I know they do. So they're still going to be subject to paying those school impact fees also. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's
and
correct.
we actually, we collect on behalf of Auburn, like the other school districts that we impose school impact fees for.
Okay. Okay, those were my only two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, Matt, sorry, I've got some more questions. All right,
okay.
So you say we have to make this decision. Do you mean like tonight? What's the deadline?
Well, maybe Adam could help me out with that answer.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What's our deadline to make a decision, Adam?
It's not necessarily tonight, but it does have to be relatively in line with the other comprehensive plan amendments that we're making. The general statutory requirement is that comprehensive plan amendments be considered concurrently, not necessarily adopted at the same time, but they kind of have to be a part of the same process.
So when are the other ones being adopted?
Tonight, I believe, is what the proposed adoption date is.
And those are on the consent calendar.
Right. Okay. So, okay, that's not really an answer, Adam. Okay, so this question's for the mayor. In this public meeting, how did people feel about this?
So there were people, so we actually didn't necessarily discuss the comp plan amendment. We talked about the what people had heard from Oak Point when they bought the property. So questions about commercial development. We talked honestly more about annexation. There was a mix of, you know, we were hoping for a coffee shop or a gas station. We don't know what we were hoping for, but the majority, like, so it was fairly split, but the majority of our conversation was around annexation or de-annexation on our part and what that process looked like, and then honestly policing.
Okay, so Matt, when it comes to studying the impacts like on traffic and schools and fire, that and SEPA, that comes during the rezoning process, right?
Yes, partially during the rezoning process, and probably to a greater extent when we have a development proposal in front of us that kind of specifies the impacts that would potentially come from, you know, development of the site, when we know how many units, where they'll be located, you know, the aesthetic elements of that. That's when we can really zero in on impacts and really apply our code, because I feel like the city code is very well developed to deal with impacts of especially residential development, and probably, you know, lots of other development as well. But we have some very specific codes that deal with residential. So we will apply those at the time. And SEPA would be a part of that. Impact fees would be a part of that. Design review would be a part of that. It's quite a list.
And Councilmember Michaud, I do want to follow up one more point. There was a significant amount of discussion around if this was residential versus commercial, what does that mean for the existing trail system that's in the Bridges development now, usage over that, who pays for it, who can use whose trails, that kind of thing. And then even the tennis courts, as you heard Brian comment about not being finished. And I can tell you that conversation ended with a commitment on the part of Oak Point and the Bridges development to talk about that as the process was further developed, that there could be opportunity for conversation with the establishment of HOAs and that kind of thing. Obviously, no decisions made because there's no specific project proposed, but a commitment to have conversation. So that was also part of that meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Matt. Those are all my questions.
Okay, Councilmember Thomas, followed by Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have two comments and two quick questions for Matt. The comments were that the area that Councilmember Zandria was concerned about, that wetlands in 3990, that particular one, that's the creek, runs right through it, the middle of it. Okay, to answer a concern that Marley had was the fact that, okay, we've got 150-foot setbacks currently if that plan was to be applied to a normal place, a new development. But now they're trying to work it out so that they can meet and consider the possibility of using the 2004 setbacks of 50 feet, which would be terrific for them. Now, Does Auburn have to comply with that? We really don't know. Or do they have to pick up new standards like ours, maybe 150 feet? We're not sure is the answer. So Matt, my last two questions are, did Oak Point, I think you said, well, a dog, show you renderings of their plans, their future kind of layout of plans?
They have shown us tentative renderings of their plans, but they've not officially proposed those for any kind of code review.
Yeah, tentative renderings come to reality soon enough. Okay, then that last question, you'll be glad I'm the last question here. So, did you see in that rendering commercial development?
I did not. I'll tell you, I didn't look particularly closely, but because it's not the subject of our review, but no, I didn't.
You have answered the question. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Larmer.
Yes, I think this will be my last question, hopefully. And I think it's a question for Adam or Matt. What is the public notice requirement on this? Is there a public meeting required or a public hearing required for the PUD, what we're considering tonight?
Yeah, I'll start. There is a public hearing requirement that was held in front of the Land Use and Planning Board on, I think it was February 8th.
Okay,
and
so that was Land Use and Planning Board only.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've received some information from residents that they may have only had 4 days notice. Likely it has to do with the fact that, most of the houses and bridges are, far from even 500 feet from the notice area. So, okay, but we did fulfill our legal requirement for a public hearing. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Matt or Adam? Okay. Councilmember Larmer, did you have a follow-up question? Okay. All right. Looks like we've come to the end of the questions. At this point, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4395, approving comprehensive plan amendment, CPA 2019-6, changing the land use designation for 13.2 acres of the Bridges PUD from urban separator to low density multifamily as proposed by the applicant.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Michaud. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item?
Roll call, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll get there. 1 second, Councilmember Thomas. Any discussion? Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be approving this year motion tonight. I'm all about process, right? And I think it's important that we understand what the process follow for this particular activity. And based on what I heard tonight, the process has been followed. We need to keep in mind that, we have 2 guardrails in front of us before we make these type of decisions. One of the guardrail is a land use planning board. This process went in front of the land use planning board. It came out unanimously. All members approved this here unanimously. We also have our staff who have done a tremendous good job of providing us with data to help us make a decision. And I think they are making a recommendation that we move forward. I think some of the questions from a legal perspective, I'm very confident with our attorney, Adam, as far as what the legal implication could be. Our chief talked about police and making sure that, we are in sync to be able to support that area from a policing and make sure it's safe. It is part of Kent. And I think that one of the most important thing to me is that Auburn, their staff are in line with the comp plan on this development. And as time goes on, It's not like Auburn can say that we don't want this here. They like where we're heading at. So from a process perspective, I can't see any reason why I personally will not approve this here, knowing that this is the first step in the process. In order to go forward, we need to move this forward. So for that reason, I will be supporting this here motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Any additional comments? All right, I am not seeing any hands. Kim, based on Councilmember Thomas's request, will you please call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Boyce?
Yes.
Councilmember Fincher?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaur?
No.
Councilmember Larmer?
No.
Councilmember Michaud?
No.
Councilmember Thomas?
No.
Councilmember Troutner?
Yes.
All right, motion fails 4-3. Councilmember Boyce, did you have a comment?
Yes. I'm just curious, what's the next step in this here? And then also, what other information is needed to continue this year or not continue this year? What is the process for that?
Okay, Matt or Adam, could you speak to what next steps are? And then I would look to the council for additional questions they have for staff.
Well, I would say that, and Adam, please, I assume you'll have something to add here. This application could be considered next year. There's an annual cycle where these proposals can be considered, and so this could come back again. And that would be something that Oak Point would propose if they chose.
Yeah, and I may need Pat to step in here just for council procedure, but I believe the other option would be to move to deny the application.
Correct.
Okay, and so Adam, my understanding is that the council is required to take action. So then the next step, my question to council is there a motion to deny this application?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to know if we can discuss this again, like soon. I just feel like I needed more information.
Okay, Adam, I guess I will look to you on timeline. Do we need a motion this evening to deny?
No, not necessarily. I believe it could be continued over until the next meeting.
Okay. Then if that's the case, if there is no one that intends on making a motion to deny, I would ask that council be very specific in the information that they would like to see brought back. We'll start with Councilmember Michaud, followed by Larmer, Kaur, and then Fincher.
I don't have any more questions, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any specific information you would like to see brought back?
So the concerns from the residents, Madam Mayor, these emails that they're discussing, I would like to see those.
Okay. Going in order, it looks like Councilmember Kaur is next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I felt like the council hadn't heard from the residents on this before, and tonight was the first time, basically, and the emails we received hearing from them. So I would like to hear, I understand our code is saying, we only need to reach out to like 300 radius or whatever, but I feel like we need to do better because it's impacting a whole neighborhood sometimes. I just sort of felt like we need to hear from the residents and see what exactly they're thinking. And we all know Oak Point we've heard from them, they're adamant about this application because they are going to be, not considering commercial, and that's fine. I just feel like we need more information from the residents to see what exactly their concerns are. And I also have concerns about, as I mentioned before, the emails that sort of came up, and it raises. I feel iffy about this, so I would be open to having this conversation again if we're able to address those email concerns and address concerns from our residents and actually listen to them, and not just the developers who are trying to build in our community. I appreciate them. We cannot build our communities without developers, but we also need to listen to the residents, the neighbors, how they're going to be impacted. Thank you.
Councilmember Larmer.
Yeah, for me, it is a matter of, I'd like to understand more about these emails that were referenced and know exactly the context for those comments that I heard. So I'd like to see those because those coupled with the fact that Auburn doesn't want to go make an on-record statement, that's just a huge red flag for me. So I have definitely some concerns there. And then, the public hearing, I mean, I get it. We use, a computer program to model out 300 feet or 500 feet, but we've got to be smart. I mean, when we miss a huge entire neighborhood that is going to be impacted by this development, that's not good enough public notice for me. And then I'm hearing some other concerns about them just not getting enough days, even before the hearing, before the Land Use and Planning Board. So I have to question if the Land Use and Planning Board had all the information that they needed. And then lastly, I'm again, like Councilmember Corr said, I'm not against, revisiting this topic. It just felt really rushed. I would also like to find out, developing using 17-year-old standards for wetland protection really concerns me. I'm not happy with that, and I feel like maybe another year would give us time to evaluate that and maybe bring our own standards up to where they're at today. So that for me, those were the three things. It's the emails, Auburn's public position on this. More due diligence in the public hearing and public notice, and then the wetland setbacks being 17 years old.
Okay. Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I heard two answers as to when they could do this again. Matt mentioned, we could do it next year when we redo the comprehensive plans there. Or Adam said, well, no, we need an answer tonight, yes or no, up or down. So then he said, well, maybe we may make it to the next meeting. So I'm questioning where is the right answer in this?
All right, I see Pat Fitzpatrick has his hand raised.
All right.
Hi, Council. I just want to note that we're kind of in rarefied air here. So I would suggest there's some unknowns right now. I think that it would be good for staff to go back and determine what next steps would be. And in the meantime, staff can try to answer some of the questions that have been raised tonight and provide some comprehensive answers. I know there's questions about the emails. The wetland protection issue, I'm not sure we can really answer that now because it's not in play until an actual proposal is made. But there's some things I think that we can try to answer to put council. I'm sensing that council is uncomfortable making the decision, and that's for a lot of you. You're uncomfortable making the decision at this point, and so I think that staff can try to provide you additional information and then determine what the next step is. That's my suggestion at this point.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Councilmember Michaud, did you have a question?
Yes, a comment. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I completely agree with Pat. That is the issue. I just wanted to clarify that I'll be ready to make this decision as soon as I have that information. I don't really want to postpone this for another year. I don't think that's fair to a point. So I just wanted to say that. I think once we get, this will give everyone, more time to give public comments and for us to get some documents together. So I'm in favor of, discussing this sooner rather than later.
All right. We will have staff, Councilmember Boyce.
Madam Mayor, based on what Councilmember Show just stated, I was wondering, is it possible between now and our next council meeting that we could possibly bring that back? Will give hopefully staff enough time to answer my peers' questions they may have, and I will propose that we will bring it back at our next council meeting as possible.
All right. Pat, would you like to weigh in there?
Yeah, sorry. We will do our best to answer the questions that have been presented. This is a very complex matter, so if there are additional questions, I would really appreciate receiving those questions in writing within the next couple of days. I think that if council is interested in readdressing this matter, that we should do that sooner rather than later. That's my suggestion. So I think we can get this set for the next council meeting with some staff input. I can't speak on behalf of ECD staff. Matt can certainly speak to that, but we can certainly do our homework on our end and get this prepared to move forward.
All right, Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just perhaps pose the question that, just to follow up with Pat there. I think there are some questions that we could answer in fairly short order, but I do hear some concerns about, wanting more public comment or more opportunity. So I would maybe suggest that we answer the questions that we can and perhaps come back with a, when we have time to consider a plan for addressing these concerns, that we bring those back to you in short order. I'm just not sure we can address all of this quickly, but I'd like some, a few days to get with other staff and come up with a plan, answer what we can and plan for what we can't.
Okay, it sounds like a commitment on behalf of staff to start addressing these issues, and then we'll come up with a plan going forward. Councilmember Thomas.
Madam Mayor, I would move that we table this item indefinitely, and we could take it off the table in 2 weeks or whatever, but that seemed like an easy solution to this.
Okay, so are you offering a motion, Councilmember Thomas?
That was correct.
All right. Is there a second to Councilmember Thomas's motion?
Can we define the difference between tabling it and then just putting it back on the agenda in 2 weeks?
Okay. Can I answer that, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Thomas.
If you say we bring it back in 2 weeks, that means yes, in 2 weeks, it's there. And we have to go through this whole thing again. Tabling and indefinitely means you can take it on in 2 weeks, or you could take it on a month from today, or, whatever the council wants to do. If they're ready and prepared to do it, if the staff has brought the information that you guys have desired, then, hey, 2 weeks is maybe enough. I'm afraid it's not sufficient time to get input from the residents of that area within a 2 week period, but I may be wrong. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll
second then.
All right, so I've got a motion, a second. I'm going to let Matt weigh in, and then Councilmember Boyce.
Thanks, Mayor. That was sort of the purpose of me wanting to kind of step back and figure out what steps we might need to take in order to address all of the concerns. And I'm just not sure at this point if we could do that on a 2 week turnaround, or if we might need a little bit more time to sufficiently answer the questions and address the concerns. And so I would propose coming back at the minimum, coming back next week or at the next meeting with a plan, or communicating that to the council once we've had a chance to kind of evaluate all of this.
Okay, Councilmember Boyce.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have a lot of faith in our staff. Okay, I will propose. I won't be supporting Councilmember Thomas' motion. I have a lot of faith in our staff. let them bring it back, and we can, if we need to table it then so be it. But I think I like to get a staff a benefit to go, and Councilmember made it clear on all the questions. The only one that may be questionable is being able to meet with the community. But every other question that I heard from everyone else, except for that one, could be answered. Whether that one will be enough to stop us going forward, I don't know. But I will not be supporting this here, and I think we should let staff bring it back in a couple of weeks, and then we'll make that decision at that time.
Okay, Councilmember Core, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I support the motion. As we just heard from Matt, the staff is saying that 2 weeks is not enough for them. So he said he'll be back in 2 weeks with the plan. And like I said, once our concerns or questions are all answered, I'd be happy to support it. So I am not saying I'm strictly against it. I just want to give them their time they need to do their due diligence. And when we are all comfortable as council, I'd be happy to make that decision. Thank you.
Okay. Matt, would you like to weigh in before we proceed with more comments on the motion?
The public comment element of it is just something that I don't have a good sense right at this moment what it would take to sufficiently do that. So I don't want to be disagreeable, but that may take some time to address adequately.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to move this on. One way or the other, I think that we should go ahead and handle it. I do understand the public comment. And so for that reason, I would be willing to table it, but I don't think that it should be. I would like to see this, if it's not the next meeting, then the following meeting. Instead of waiting 6 months, we have the time limit of having this as part of our comp plan. So, once that ship sails, it is another year down the road. So I think that's an important part to remember too. And that we have had this for quite a while.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Council President Troutner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Fincher is right. We have seen this before. We have talked about this. Many of us have actually sat down and met with Brian Ross and been able to ask questions and have conversations with him. I feel like we have a liability, and it is the right thing for us to do to move forward with this. And I think I don't agree with having a motion to move forward. I think if people want to have their question answered, that's fine. But we've spent enough time on this. I think we just need to move on.
Call for the vote, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to thank you, Councilmember Boyce. I am going to let Matt weigh in one more time, and then we'll call for the question.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Thomas.
There were hands raised, ready to ask concerns or whatever on this motion. So I think I understand where Bill's coming from, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, Matt, did you have more to add?
Only that if we wanted to collect more public input, it may take more than 2 weeks. Otherwise, I think we can address the questions. And I would just add that as part of the discussion.
Okay, so there was a call for the question, and at that point, we need to take a vote.
Roll call, Your Honor.
I've got a motion and a second. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Would you please restate the motion?
Table.
Is this the one for tabling indefinitely?
Yes.
Yeah, like a month.
Thank you.
No, indefinitely.
No, indefinitely does not say a month.
No, but it could be 2 weeks. It could be a month. I don't expect them to come back more than that because they are professional people. They're great staff, and I expect them to come back with a plan in 2 weeks. And then after that, maybe 2 weeks more for the answer.
Roll call, Your Honor.
Yeah, Councilmember Fincher, to answer your question, the motion on the table the motion on the floor is to table indefinitely.
Thank you.
So, Kim, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Boyce.
No.
Councilmember Fincher.
No.
Councilmember Core.
Yes.
Councilmember Larmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Michaud. No. Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Councilmember Troutner?
No.
Okay, so Kim, help me, we ended up.
It is 4 no, 3 yes.
Okay, so the motion to table fails, 4-3. I am going to look to Pat to ask about process. Do we need a motion at this point to deny the application? Where does this leave us?
I would suggest you make that motion so that staff knows what the next step is, to be honest with you. I'm not clear on what staff is currently being asked to do, whether we are going to be asked to follow up with more information or if this issue is going to be settled tonight.
Okay, so is there a motion to deny this application? Oh, I'm looking to look at Derek Matheson there. He may be able to step in.
I have a suggestion that I think can move us forward. Staff will do the research, come back in 2 weeks with information, or if there's enough information, come back in 2 weeks with 2 possible motions, a motion to approve and a motion to deny, and council can take up one of those motions at that point after deciding whether the information we've provided is adequate.
I'm seeing Councilmember Thomas nodding his head. Councilmember Fincher, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, that doesn't address the public comment. Now, for me, for public comment, I would be okay with getting the emails and all, but I didn't hear, did you mention the public comment and I just missed it there? The information they're bringing back in 2 weeks?
I guess I just assumed that there would be a public comment opportunity at the next council meeting, okay, as with any council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Michaud, followed by Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Derek, do I need to make a motion to bring it back in 2 weeks?
I think if there's consensus of the council to bring it back in 2 weeks with answers to your questions and possible motions, then that would be adequate direction to staff for preparing the next agenda.
Okay, Councilmember Thomas, and then I will look to council for some head nods as far as consensus goes.
If that was her motion, I'll second it.
There was no motion made.
All right.
Okay, do we have consensus for Derek's plan? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5.
Sure.
All right, that gives us consensus. We will move forward with an update at the next council meeting. All right, with that, are we ready to move on in the agenda? Okay. The next item on the agenda is an ordinance revising the city's B&O tax extension to outdoor warehouse activities. Joining us this evening is our finance director, Paula Painter.
Good evening, Mayor Ralph, Council President Troutner, and members of City Council. I'm excited to be here tonight. In front of you is an ordinance that's amending a section of the city code, establishing a standalone 6-acre square footage threshold for the calculation of the outdoor square footage tax. These changes would be effective retroactively back to January 1, 2021. As you may recall, back in September last year, the city adopted an ordinance that went into effect on January 1 in extending the square footage component of the city's B&O tax to include outdoor warehousing activities. The intent of the ordinance was to create a standalone 6-acre threshold that would be applied for that tax. However, early in February, it was determined that the code could be interpreted to include taxable outdoor warehousing area that is less than the 6 acres should The business also meets any of the other square footage components, whether it's the warehouse square footage space or the other business floor space. So last week we brought this to Committee of the Whole, trying to seek some direction about what way we wanted to go. Do we want to leave the code as it was currently, its current status, or modify it to align with the original intent of the ordinance? So what we have here, based on the meeting, it was the desire to update the code to actually be in alignment with what the intent was. So on page 9 of the ordinance in your packet, you're going to find edits that provides clarity and aligns the code with the original intent. Specifically, it provides for the square footage tax to be a standalone threshold and no longer dependent on the warehousing square footage tax. At this point, I would be very happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Paula. Any questions? All right, I am seeing none. With that, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4396, amending section 3.28.050 of the Kent City Code to establish a standalone 6-acre square footage threshold for calculation of outdoor warehouse space square footage tax effective January 1st, 2021.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, we've got motion carries 6-1. Thank you very much, Paula.
Yeah, thank you.
We are moving on to item number 10 on the agenda. We have 3 bids this evening. The first one is the Lake Fenwick Hypolimnetic Aerator Improvements Project bid, and joining us is Mira Huback.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'll wait for my slide to come up. I'm Mira Huback with Public Works Environmental, and I'm happy to bring forward a construction contract for the Lake Fenwick Hypolimnetic Aerator Improvements. As you know, the aerator is located on the West Hill. It functions like a bubbler in an aquarium, and it provides oxygen to the lake. The aerator, however, needs upgrades because since it was built in 1994, the lake has continued to experience algal blooms, which can be toxic and shut down access to the lake. Once built, this project should provide more oxygen and distribute it better throughout the lake, and also help decrease the risk of future toxic algal blooms. When we advertised this project, we received 3 bids, which makes sense because this is a unique project with highly specialized work. And upon contract award, we anticipate work will begin in April and wrap up in the fall. So I'd like to recommend authorization to award the contract to the lowest bidder, Associated Underwater Services, whose competitive bid was less than 1% off of the city's estimate.
All right, any questions for Mira before we call for a motion? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor, I would move to award the Lake Fenwick Aerator Improvement Project to Associated Underwater Services Incorporated in the amount of $922,592.31, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and public works director.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Mira. The next 2 items will be presented by Chad Barron, our Public Works Director. We have the 2021 Plastic Markings Project bid and the 2021 Asphalt Grinding Project bid. Chad, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to be here as the director this time, and I'm excited to be here with a couple of good bids. These are more of our kind of maintenance item bids. The first one is the 2021 plastic markings refresh. This is where we go through and we refresh stop bars and arrows on the pavement. So the engineer's estimate for this came in at $191,000 and change. The low bid was $125,000. So we're very excited. The bids in the past have been closer to that $191,000, and so we've had some good bids this year, and this keeps it going. So I'll rest for questions.
All right. Any questions for Chad? Okay, seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to award the 2021 plastic marketing project to Applied A-Line LLC in the amount of $125,357 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and the public works director.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the final bid, the asphalt grinding project bid.
Thank you. Another good bid. This is for the 2021 asphalt grinding, where we hire a grinder to go ahead of the public works operations crews that do the paving throughout the city. So we also will have a 2021 asphalt overlay project. That's where we have a contractor come in and they'll do some grinding and overlay, but this is just for the grinding. They go ahead of our ops crews, grind it out, and then they come back and pave it. So again, another good bid. Engineer's estimate $148,000 and change with a low bid of $103,000. So excited about this one as well.
All right, any questions for Chad? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor, I move to award the 2021 asphalt grinding project to Puget Paving and Construction, Inc. in the amount of $103,087 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and public works director.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. That brings us to item number 11, which is executive session. We do not have one this evening. And item number 12 is adjournment. Thank you so much for council conversation and public participation this evening. And with that, we are adjourned.